I wanted to ask you, Helen Thomas, about Scott McClellan, the former White House press secretary, who became a vocal critic after stepping down, a critic of the Bush administration. I interviewed him last June. He spoke about your role in the White House press corps.
Well, first of all, I think we need more Helen Thomases in the press corps, both the National Press Corps, even in the White House press corps as well. She's someone who's not afraid to ask the tough questions and hold people accountable for the decisions that are made. So I think that's important to state right up front.
That was Scott McClellan after he stepped down as press secretary. Helen Thomas, you surprised by his praise?
Somewhat, having been called Hezbollah and everything else, probably. Well, I mean, I suppose it's the position that you're trying. How can you speak for the President of the United States? I mean, you cannot go off the curve, and so everything is forgivable, and you always have to understand what position a spokesperson is in. I think it's the toughest job in the White House, being a spokesperson for the president and for American policy, which is sometimes very unacceptable.
What is your assessment of the White House press corps? Has it changed over the decades, and what did you think of the White House press corps that covered all of the press covering President Bush?
I think they lost their guts after 9/11. No one wanted to ask penetrating questions for fear of being called un-American, unpatriotic. And I think their publishers, wherever they are, maybe Wall Street and so forth, were saying, lay off. You know, we're all Americans and we have to stick together no matter what. So I don't think reporters should, I mean, obviously the ideal is to seek the truth, no matter where the chips fall.
I wanted to go back to a late White House press secretary. That was Tony Snow. In 2006, you questioned him about the U.S. response to the Israeli attack on Lebanon. This is the exchange.
The United States is not that helpless. It could have stopped the bombardment of Lebanon. We have that much control with the Israelis.
I don't think so.
We have gone for collective punishment against all of Lebanon and Palestine.
No, what's interesting, Helen,
and that's the perception of the United States.
Well, thank you for the Hezbollah view, but I would encourage you.
Nobody's accepting your explanation. What is restraint? You call for
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting, Helen, is people have. The G8 was completely united on this, and as you know, when it comes to issues of
ceasefire, why?
We didn't stop a ceasefire. Let me continue. I'll tell you what. We didn't even veto. Please get your facts right.
That was Tony Snow. Your response, Helen Thomas.
My response is I was right to press him. I think that, you know, any world leader, no matter who's right and who's wrong, you stop the killing of innocent people. And all the people really are basically innocent on all sides.
Helen Thomas, you were born in Kentucky. Your parents, Lebanese Christians. Your Arab American background, do you think that informs, or how does it inform your reporting?
Of course. I have a background and an understanding of what's happened in the Middle East that a lot of people don't have because there's been no interest. But why shouldn't I project some of my feelings and so forth? I mean, I have that right as an opinion column. But also, I hope I seek justice. And I don't think that I go off the highway.
You have covered, well, starting Tuesday, 10 presidents. You were the only woman on Nixon's flight to China. What was it like to cover Richard Nixon?
I was the only
woman reporter.
Yes, in the print department. There was a one-woman radio and Barbara Walters for TV. So there were other women in that respect. What was, pardon me?
What was it like to cover Richard Nixon going to China and also his demise?
Well, it was thrilling because every reporter in Washington wanted to be on that trip, maybe in the whole country, because we knew it was a tremendous historical event, that it was a breakthrough 20-year hiatus in relations with China. Everything, nobody knew anything about what was happening except CIA and India and so forth, surrounding countries. So we knew that we would be really writing history, and it was really like landing on the moon. Everything was a story. What the people ate, what they looked like, what they wore, and so forth. Well, I can assure you we had a field day for 8 days.
And now, will you be covering the inauguration of the 44th president of Barack Obama?
I'll be writing a column about it and his speech and so forth, but I won't be doing the minute-to-minute. I will be seeing what everybody else sees, I hope, mostly on TV.
Finally, what advice do you have for young journalists?
Go for it. It's the greatest profession in the world. You're making a real contribution to democracy by keeping people informed, and have some courage to tell the truth. I think it's difficult at times. There are many barriers, but go for it. It's a great, great profession.
And finally, do you have your first question planned for President Barack Obama?
Sure, I have 1,000 of them. I say, you know, what are you going to do to fulfill your ideals that so expressed on the campaign trail? Or are you going to submit, like most presidents, just follow through, try to carry out your promises that have no meaning except for how many people gave you money?
Today, Hillary Clinton goes before the Senate, before her colleagues, to be questioned before her confirmation hearing as Secretary of State. Your thoughts on the First Lady, who you covered for many years, now becoming the Secretary of State, and the question you would ask her?
Question I would ask her is, what's she going to do about the Middle East? She's been on all sides of the question. She first proposed a Palestinian state when she ran in New York. Understandably, she pulled back on that. I don't know where she stands, and I don't think it matters where she stands. It's probably, where does Obama stand?
Well, Helen Thomas, I want to thank you for being with us. You're famous for saying at the end of every news conference, "Thank you, Mr. President." I say to you, thank you, Helen Thomas.
Thank you, Amy.